Hi, I'm Cody with Gracebased. On season 2 of the Gracebased Podcast, you're going to hear from Aaron and Dana Daly. They're good friends of mine, and they are going to share with you a vision for how to talk to your kids about sex through a grace-based lens. I am so excited. As a father of 4, my wife and I are constantly having this conversation. We want nothing more than for our kids to grow up with a full vision of the idea of what it means to understand sex, relationships, marriage, and the goodness of how God created us in our bodies. And I'm so excited to share this with you, so go check it out.
We're hoping that you're beginning to see a pattern in our podcasts and in each episode kind of building on top of each other. The purpose of that is for us to start to introduce themes on a broad level and then kind of zoom in on a specific level that's practical, because we want to partner kind of the thought behind it with the application. And I know as parenting happens, we can really just want to do application really fast, but it is important for us to kind of have deeper thought behind it. So this episode, we're going to look at the fall. And this is where you have to do the work of talking about creation more and more and more. Even emphasizing creation more helps you when you get to the fall. And this has been a big passion of yours, Dana, like really starting in creation. What's something that just on a big level, I know we mentioned it in other episodes, why we need to keep emphasizing creation?
Oh yeah, no, it's to me, it's really clear. If you always are working from creation, then there's always hope.
That's right.
And there's always growth, and there's always room to grow, and there's always something to look forward to. When you start with the fall, there's not anything to build from, except you'll build into fear, and you'll build into arrogance and pride, and there's not the hope that creation brings.
And they won't look at it as good.
Right.
We want our kids to look at all God has created as good, including their bodies, their desires, their relationships, that the goodness of creation is the foundation. So you have to start with the foundation before you start building on it. But now we are at the fall. We've got to let the story progress. That a big part of the story of God is that sin devastated creation. It devastated shalom. It destroyed all that God had created that was good. And this is an important place to get to. All we're saying is don't start there. But when you get there, what are some things we need to be thinking about that sin is? And the first thought that me and you talk about often is that the church has made sin just about rule breaking, and therefore parents have made sin just about rule breaking. Why is that dangerous to make it simply about breaking rules?
I think the biggest thing that comes to mind when we're talking about sex and everything that goes around that is that when a mistake happens, if it's a rule, you failed.
Right.
And then that's cut and dry.
Yes.
When it's something deeper, when we understand the beauty of what God created, we understand the damage of sin, then we also get the opportunity to look and say, this didn't just affect me.
Yes.
This affected the people around me. And it didn't just affect me in one area. Sin affects every area of my life. And the hard thing is that we want to try to make it just right and wrong so that we can fix it. But when we understand the damage of sin, then it definitely causes us to need to go back to creation and the beauty of creation and how God designed things and meant for things and how it's supposed to be, and that there's this room to, feel and hurt and deal with all the levels of that mistake, knowing that there's hope in a God that restores and redeems and will care for us in all of those areas.
Yeah, this is important because what is happening is more than just rule breaking. Sin is separating all that God has made one.
Right.
So creation is about shalom, which is taking all of these beautiful, distinct things, all of creation. So in marriage, it's male and female, this distinct, equal, one reality of male and female in marriage, that this kind of devastation that you see in sin is that their relationship, Adam and Eve, they were separated. Their relationship was separated. So there's relational harm.
Right.
Then their separation, the biggest one is their separation between God and man, that God made this relationship between us and him as united union with God, that he's coming to walk with us. And there was separation there in sin. And then there was separation between their relationship to creation, that we were supposed to be cultivating and stewarding all the good things, having dominion and being fruitful and multiplying. And you see the devastation in that. And so when we really start talking about sin, the ripple effects are a lot bigger and more devastating than just breaking rules. Yep. And this is why if you don't start with creation, then you're not showing the implications of all the things it impacts. And so our encouragement in all of our resources are to have holistic effects of sin. So when you first started teaching sex in schools and sex education, and when we first started discipling young people, like in youth ministry, the trend at that time was showing all the physical effects. So having them talk about STDs and pregnancies and all that kind of stuff. Not that those are not effects.
Right.
Why is it so dangerous to just focus on one dimension of the effects? So you saw that in your own life, which is what caused you to make that shift.
I think, again, if we make it a rule, then it's fixable. And when we have all of the physical aspects that could happen, we miss the heart. We miss the damage that's done in who we are as a person. We miss the damage that's done in our relationships. We miss the damage and the hurt of even, I think again, you feel the separation when you, what you were just explaining with Adam and Eve, when you sin, you feel an immediate separation because of your guilt and your shame. And so there's so many different layers and levels of care when it comes to sexual sin. And when we focus just on that physical part, we're missing really the heart of the father, of a good father who desires his children to be close. It's not just a matter of fixing a problem and moving on. It's being drawn back into the father's arms and feeling safe and secure, even if I've made a mistake, even if I blew it, even if damage has been done to me, I can still be safe in my father's arms.
So let's get practical with that question. So you did make the shift to more of a heart level. So what are some of the practical shifts in what you changed? What did you change from just talking about STDs to what more do we add?
We added relationships. A big part is the relationships, what a healthy relationship looks like. Again, going back to creation, the way it was meant to be and the beauty of that. And then from there, recognizing the brokenness of relationships and what that does. And then how to grow in not just in a teacher teaching you something, but developing the relationship between parents and kids and how to help parents be the ones that teach this, that are able to, and I think even wrapped up in that is the parents being able to also process through and deal with their own history. And it just went from being very minimal in the teaching to holistic and caring for the entire family, caring for every part of what can happen in a person's life.
Yeah, so we're talking mental.
Yeah.
So the anxiety levels on a child that is experiencing whatever kinds of addiction or abuse or whatever, the anxiety levels are so high.
Yeah.
I mean, the research on this is insane.
Right.
The social or relational you mentioned, it affects their relationships with their parents, with their friends, with themselves. It affects their spiritual lives. I mean, even if people don't believe in the spiritual, there is for those who are followers of Christ a recognition that, man, my spiritual, they feel distant from God. They feel distant from their church. It also affects, and this is hard for us to understand because it's often what we can't control. It affects the systems of the world. And so like our whole world has sexualized everything. So sin goes beyond personal, meaning just what happens in the physical realm. It goes to their mind, their spirit, their bodies, their systems, the structures of the world, their relationships, their social life. And if they can start to see the impact of this on a much broader level, then they're getting a bigger picture of, well, don't do this or this will happen. Now they're starting to see how what God has made good is eroding. And so this also distorts the way people use power. And this it becomes important for us to talk about, because when people who are in power use their power to abuse sexually, this becomes where people use and distort power and systems. So they can begin to see, man, if somebody's in power and they're using it to distort it and use it in ways that are not a way that it looks like the creation, now your kids can start to identify, it doesn't matter who or what position or how much money they have, they shouldn't be able to use this for their own sexual gain. So this, it helps to expose your children to a bigger picture of sin than just don't do this, don't do that.
Well, and I think too, as parents, it causes you to have to slow down and really see your kids. Yeah. So like you were sharing with anxiety, bad behavior, things like that. When we've just taught rules, then we can say, you're not following the rules. You're a bad kid. You have bad behavior. Yeah. You know, we put them in a different box instead of recognizing and slowing it down and being able to go, why are you acting this way?
Yeah.
How are you feeling?
What's the deeper thing?
Did something happen?
Yeah.
Can we have that conversation when there's an understanding of God's beautiful creation and the way things should be pre-sin? Then we're able to look at it and go, okay, this isn't right. So how can I see my kid? I think in my past, I can remember in high school when I had, up to that point, it had been not my choice when things were done to me. And I got an attitude in high school of, if this is going to keep happening, I'm going to take control, because you think you're in control. You know, like you were just sharing, all of a sudden, I think I have some kind of power. And when I did that and I started to make those choices, I didn't like who I was from the get-go. And I started changing, like on purpose. I started wearing different clothes. I'd always been a tomboy, and all of a sudden I'm wearing smaller clothes. I'm being a very different personality. And I can remember conversations at night on my bed with the Lord and just saying, have somebody ask me, have one person ask me, and I will let it all out. And I felt like I was, and a lot of times we don't do it consciously. I was consciously putting myself out there to say, please. And I can remember hearing a response of somebody I walked by, sad enough, at my church. And the woman said, I would never let my daughter wear that outfit. I can't believe her mom let her wear that. And had she just like taken a second to recognize, somebody that had known me for years and had seen a drastic change was only willing to look at facts and figures.
Well, this is what we're trying to press into. I'm glad you shared that story, because the church's reaction or parents' reaction is often to try to fix the outward things rather than address the heart, where the outward things now become an indicator. To your point, your kids may be giving you indication. And if you would slow down enough, not to just look, how do I fix the where they're dressing or the kinds of things they're looking at? How do I just fix that? Now you're going, there's real brokenness and wounds that are there that if I would just sit down and have a conversation with and lean into the brokenness, this leads to what happens with sin. And so we have to know this in our own conversations, because as parents, take it away from just when you were a kid. Now put yourself into a place of a mom. As parents, we are so afraid of often the brokenness of this world and so affected by it that we're often just trying to protect our kids from the brokenness more than we are trying to lead them in this broken world. We have to remember we are parenting sinful kids.
Yeah.
But
We've said
we
that
are
often
sinful
through the years.
We are sinful parents.
Yeah.
You know. So yeah, you can see the sins of your children.
Right.
But we have sinful hearts ourselves, fears and wounds.
Yeah.
And so what we're trying to do is say, man, the best way to lean into sin is not to avoid it or judge it or criticize it or look down on it. It is to do what Christ did to enter in. Now, when Christ enters in and comes and pursues them and meets them in their fall while they're hiding, this is an important thing. So our tendency since the beginning has been to hide from sin. So first of all, that I don't want to put shame on us as parents. I just want us to see our tendencies. Our tendency is not to lean in with grace or to enter into their pain and into the sin that they're struggling with because we often don't understand it. So just speaking from a parent's side, there's many things that my kids struggled with that I can relate to. But then there are things that my kids are struggling with that I don't. And I know I felt this as a child, that my parents don't understand the struggle that I'm going through. Even though there were some struggles they did, a lot, culture changes and there's struggles that happen. And as parents, it requires even some humility to try to enter into another context and culture, to try to bend down, if you will, and come down out of heaven, if you will, our place of like elevation, and to come into the garden with them and lean in. That's tough to try to understand and try to say, why are you hiding? And who told you this? So I want to encourage you as parents that even if you don't understand it, even if it feels so gross to you and so weird, to enter in and to pursue and come and find them and ask, who told you? Isn't it amazing that God's first confrontation is a question? Who told you that you were naked? Who told you? He's starting a conversation with them, and they felt free enough to say, I knew, this, or it's this woman that you gave to me, or no, it's this guy, or no, it's this serpent. It's all that kind of what takes place is that we want to hide from it. Don't hide from it, but also don't be shocked when your kids want to hide from you. Because that's human nature.
Right.
That when they're doing something that they know is sinful and damaging, they are going to hide from you and from others, because something about the darkness and the covering themselves feels safer. And that's why it's important for us to not become angry. Why did they hide from me?
Right.
Why are they trying to hide these things? But understanding that's just the nature of sin.
Right. I love that language, lean into it. And I think the big thing of leaning in is that it's not a one-time conversation with everything else. Everything we've been saying, it's not a one-time conversation.
I feel like we keep saying that over and over again because it's important.
For everything, not just for talking, for everything. But I think with knowing the different personalities just of our kids and myself and you, I'm going to wrap myself out fast on a lot of the times. And we have different kids in our home and different kids I work with that it's going to take a long time before they're willing to feel safe. And I think even with, I love that, like you'd said, with Adam and Eve, and when God came in and asked them those questions, and you've taught this in the past, the thing about light is it reveals and protects. And so to be at a place where they feel protected, then you will get to the point where they can reveal. And I think that goes both ways. That's when they've made poor choices that they need to confess and walk through and deal with the sin that they're doing, but also that same thing of feeling safe when this happened to me and I need help as well. And I think that's a big thing with when you say lean in, that again, this is a long term, it's a long journey, and it may not be an immediate conversation the first time you start talking to your kids about these things, but becoming that safe place. And a big thing with our kids is we can deal with truth.
Yeah.
We can't deal with lies because we don't know what's going on. But when truth comes out, we're here to deal with it. And we're here for the long journey. We're here to walk through that. That's consequences, healing, redemption, restoration, all of it. We're here to walk through it if we can have truth. But getting to that place of somebody feeling safe enough to tell you truth, that might be a long road. And so I want to encourage parents as well. Don't give up. Don't feel like they're not telling you something. We have stories where I just had this gut feeling, and I know it was the Spirit that our kids were doing stuff that we didn't know about. And I just had this sick feeling, prayed about it, finally told you, and your response is, let's go deal with it. Where I'm like, no, let's wait. And I'm thankful for that, because in those situations when we've dealt with it, when we've talked to our kids, light came, truth came to the surface, and we were able to walk through things. And so that's why I think even with parents, when you know there's something going on and I don't know what it is, lean in and be patient.
But you don't have to do it with guilt.
No.
You don't have to do it with anger.
Right.
You have to do it with understanding and grace, but lean in. Don't run from it. And notice this, that our kids can get really good at pretending because they know what you want them to do, so they can pretend. Our kids can get really good at performing, just living up to what it is that they think that you expect. We don't want them to be pretenders. We don't want them to be performers. Our kids can get really good at covering things up.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a part of their sin nature, including ours.
Mm-hmm.
And they can learn it from us because we as families can just pretend like we don't want people to know how broken we are performing. We can teach them unintentionally.
Right.
But the other thing we try to do is justify it. We try to make like, this is just human nature. This is the way that it is. Justifying it rather than receiving God's forgiveness and working through it. So they can learn that from us, or they could just learn it because it's part of their nature. Just, no, I didn't think it was that bad. It's not that bad. You're just old fashioned, whatever those kinds of things are. Yeah. It's just a part of the dance of, if you will, of being in a sinful world, and they're hearing all other stories. So what we're trying to do is give people a bigger picture of this. And we said this in the creation section, but I also want to say it in the fall section, that as you're doing this, don't be afraid on this one to constantly be pointing forward to grace, because when you're talking about the fall so much, if you're not careful to just give hints of that God seeks them out in their hiding, and that God expresses even in the garden, right at the point of sin, that I'm going to send my son Jesus to heal. That even though sin corrupts, grace is always about restoring and renewing. And so as you're leaning in, they're going to say, well, you're judging me. No, I'm leaning in because I believe in grace. I'm not judging. I want to be with you in it. Because there's a tendency to ask questions, to lean in on this, but they're going to feel so much shame. They may feel condemned, or they may feel all kinds of ways about it, because that's how we feel when we're confronted with sin. That your best posture is to constantly, even when you're talking about the effects of sin, keep pointing to grace. Keep pointing back to the garden or forward to the work of Christ, so that sin is a part of or a piece of a bigger story and not just the whole deal, because this is the world we live in. So as we talk about this section from a bigger view, the next episode, we're going to kind of zoom in, but it is important for us as parents to get a bigger picture of this issue of sin. How has this helped you in your parenting to see sin's effects are more than just?
I think it gives me a lot more confidence to parent, because it's scary when you know your kids are making choices that are going to be lifelong damaging things and feel like, I can't fix it. You feel hopeless. And what can I do and where can I go? And I think being able to rest in who God is, what he's doing, that this is a long process, that there is reconciliation that's going to happen, that he is going to redeem and fix. My hope and my trust is in that, not in the response and choices of my kids and me having the power to fix it, because I can't, but finding my rest in just who he is and how he works.
This feels like a heavy episode, but important.
Mm-hmm.
And so we thank you as parents for doing the hard work and leaning in, and leaning in with grace, because even though it's feels easier to avoid it, we're just encouraging you that grace is bigger than sin.
Yeah.
And the story of God is true. And so lean into it, because you'll have the help and the power of the Spirit to walk your kids through this broken world.
This is Diane from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Gracebased makes free resources for parents thanks to the generosity of listeners like you. To join in the work of transforming generations of families, go to gracebased.com/join.